Okay, I think I'm hot. So yesterday, a lot of you had a chance to watch me create a thumbnail sketch of Jumpstart. This is an actual strip that's going to run in November, mid-November. You watched me do a thumbnail, which is a teeny tiny version of a Sunday strip, and then I created a rough sketch, which I'm about to spin the camera down for you to see. I'm now going to ink in the rough and make it a final strip. It's a little bit more tedious of a process, and I hope you find it helpful if you're starting out as a cartoonist, or even if you're a seasoned vet. It's always nice to see other professionals do their thing. So, all right, let's get started. Okay. Let me just adjust this in the frame so it's centered a little bit nicer. Sunday strips ordinarily take 2 to 3 times as long to do as a single daily strip. It's not just the length of the strip, it's the thought that has to go into it. They're a little trickier to create because the Sunday strip has more space to tell the story. And in that space, the cartoonist, in my case, I have to make my story a little bit misleading. I have to lead you down a certain road so that you don't see the final gag. If you see it up here, in here, if you know where I'm going, it's a failed attempt at humor. Without surprise, humor doesn't work. That doesn't just apply to cartooning. It applies to all forms of comedy and humor writing. You cannot know what's coming. It has to hit you in a surprising way for you to laugh. It's quite that simple. So I actually am going to show you, this is probably going to surprise you, but none of the words as I go into a finished version of this, none of the words that exist here are going to be inked in on this piece of tracing paper. I'm actually going to put all of my lettering on a separate pad of paper. I don't know if you can see that there's a grid on this piece of paper. You can see that? There's a light grid. It's very, very light blue. It is by design. The scanner, typical scanner, can't see these lines. So when I scan it into my computer, only the lettering will be visible by my scanner. And I'm going to use a pad of paper to do the lettering with the grid so that the lettering is straight. It also allows me to make the lettering as big as I want, because when I scan it, I will then use the software Photoshop to transform the words to fit inside the balloons. This frees me up at this point to write as big as I want. And for me, I just believe in that. Writing in a relaxed, large way suits my purposes better than being fussy and writing directly into the strip in a tiny way, if that makes any sense. So, the first panel, Dexter's mom is yelling at him, and she's saying, Dexter, get up and feed the dog, right? So, I have his name nice and big.
I'll send you the link so you can post it.
Okay.
Did you stop it?
We're rolling. Get up and feed the dog. So I used a Papermate flare for the finer lettering and a thick Sharpie for the thicker lettering. And I think that for the rest of this, I'll probably pretty much stick with this Papermate flare, with the exception of that frame. So Dexter, get up and feed the dog. What do you have a taste for? Algebra, or an essay on the Great Depression as he feeds his homework to the family pet. I think the Great Depression has a capital T in the. So when I had that kind of a hunch, I will I think the T should be capitalized here. I can actually just write a capital T next to it, and I can, when I get to Photoshop, the next stage, I can just cut and paste that digitally. Now I'm not going to do all my lettering on your lunch hour because it would just take a little bit too long. I want to get into the next step, which is I ink in everything except for the lettering at this point in the process. So I'll start with the balloons. All right. One of the advantages of working off of tracing, many cartoonists, including the great Charles Schulz, used to pencil lightly, like the original sketch idea, basically, and then ink on top of it, and then erase the pencil. And some people still work that way. Not many. A lot of guys actually work on a digital tablet now. But one of the advantages for me of working on a surface like this, a tracing paper, is I can easily move things and change things, and I can manipulate the line easier by hand than I could using technology. That's my opinion. I've never really given technology a fair shake. So many of my colleagues disagree with me when I start talking about the hand being better than the machine. And they say stuff like, man, if you only knew what you could accomplish. If you only knew what you could accomplish. I don't know. Maybe they're right. And I'm not saying I'll never go that route. But today, nah, I'm good. I was actually offered a free Wacom tablet by that company who makes the Cintiq. Even they were like, we'll just give you one, dude. What's the problem? Is it money? Is that the problem? Now at this stage, I can add lines. I can add lines that are not even on the rough, like that line. I just added that because I think that this strip would benefit from a sense that there's another room back here. And you can create another room by just adding negative space. Dark and negative space just says, oh, there's a room back there. So, just that kind of thing slanted at the bottom. This just says, it just says there's a room back there. This kind of thing, right? So, now I'm a little more careful as I create a final ink version of Jumpstart. I'm just a little more fussy. I really want to get in here with the facial expressions, really showing his reaction to his mother's voice, because all of that stuff adds to the funny. It makes it more funny. You always want to take every opportunity as a cartoonist to make your readers feel uplifted. You don't need to necessarily make them laugh every second, but you definitely want them to feel uplifted as they read the strip, as they go along. You don't have to wait until the very end for the funny. You can actually start to bring it just by a look, a facial expression. So I am going to make sure that his hands work. He's got fingers clasped together. I'm going to make sure that that looks real. For any kids watching this, take time to draw convincing anatomical renderings. You can't really make leaps and bounds that don't exist. You can't have arms bending in the wrong way. You can't have hands doing things hands don't do. Even though my characters are cartoon characters and they only have like 3 toes on their feet, that kind of thing. You want to make it plausible. Dexter would be sitting here in his PJs, and you can indicate PJs simply by putting little polka dots onto pants. He's enjoying a sandwich, so you want to take a bite out of that sandwich. That burger, you can just simply do that, and you have what looks like a burger with a bite out of it. And he's got some sort of a soft drink. You don't have to go crazy with this stuff, but you want to make it convincing. A bent straw. Little details like that go a long way. He's also chilling out with video games. PlayStation or something. You don't have to go hog wild drawing the actual covers of these things. They're sitting near a television, and sometimes that's more than enough. More than enough. So, also the TV is going to have a stand under it, unlike this sketch that is already here. You want to put a stand under the television. You're just adding little touches that the rough didn't have. The technical stuff on the back of a television set, for example, goes a long way. So, and I keep switching from a thick pen to a thin pen. Thick to thin, thick to thin. Part of that is I'm recreating. I even go over lines twice sometimes. I'm actually recreating the feeling of using what's called a crow quill pen, an old-fashioned pen like this thing, for example. So I was pull out this crow quill pen. Like literally back in the old days, they would dip the pen in here and then draw with it. That's the feeling I'm always trying to get by hitting a line twice with a modern pen. I know at least one other cartoonist that uses the old-fashioned pen. This guy named Patrick McDonald. He does mutts. He's extremely talented. That guy is amazing. And his strips are beautiful works of art, just absolutely stunning works of art. He's using the real thing. I'm actually recreating that look by hitting lines more than once. When I was very, very, very young and money was no object, I used a very expensive, similar pen that Patrick McDonald uses. I used a Rotring. Oops, where's the camera? Right there. I used a Rotring art pen in the beginning of my career. Rotring has a crow quill tip, and the ink is actually inside the pen in a barrel, a refillable barrel. I really like these. They're very messy, however, and they're very expensive, and you're constantly putting new cartridges into it. And by the end of the day, my fingers would be stained with ink. It would last for 2 or 3 days. So, a Rotring pen is not cheap. This is from the 1990s. Oops, there it is. I keep losing the camera. This is from the maybe 1993, 94. My daughter was a baby. Now she's 27, so that's how old this pen is. I switched to Papermate Flair pens, and it does come with a cost. That Rotring pen and that India ink inside of it is permanent. No amount of time and space is going to change that line. It won't turn faint. It won't turn brown. It just stays, India ink stays black almost for an eternity. And that meant a lot to me when I was starting out as a cartoonist. However, expediency became more important over the years, and this is what Papermate gives me, expediency. It gives me also access to tools at the nearest CVS. I found myself drawing more and more of my strips on the road. I used to do a lot of public speaking in those days, and I'd be in some weird city. I'd be somewhere else, and I could run to a CVS or Walgreens or Rite Aid and buy a Papermate Flair. And to find a Rotring art pen in those days was complex. That's putting it mildly. So I like to start with the balloons. I think it's a good place to start. It establishes the size of your lettering. The size of the balloon dictates the size of your lettering. It's another reason I don't put my final lettering on the same piece of paper. It's tricky. It's tricky making lettering fit comfortably inside a balloon. So because it's on a different piece of paper, here, I can cut and paste in Photoshop and then transform it in Photoshop to fit very comfortably with lots of air. So now you may, if you tuned in yesterday and you saw me draw a rough sketch, you may have thought, wow, he draws relatively quickly. That was a rough sketch. Now, if you notice, I've slowed down. But I haven't slowed down to the point of wasting time. I still like to, even with the final inking, create something that is really not fast or slow. There's a nice pace. It's important to establish the pace that you draw. And that doesn't mean speed. It just means I'm drawing at a consistent pace. I know how long this whole process is going to take ahead of time, is what I mean. So here's his family dog. This dog's name is William. By the way, I want to thank my creative director, my design director. She did my website and designed my fashion line and stuff. Her name is Lynn Chang. Lynn is a very talented designer. Has helped me a lot. And her cat, God rest his soul, was named William. This is where I got the name for this dog in this particular installment of Jumpstart. Named it after Lynn's cat, who lived a long life for a cat, but he was a very, very cool dude, and we miss William. So, paying homage to him, that cat. Paying homage with a dog. I've done the same thing with a cat named Mortimer, by the way. Mortimer is a cat in Las Vegas belonging to Greg and Juanita Salmons, and Mortimer in Jumpstart is named after him. So, let's see, the next thing we're going to do, so I just finished drawing the throwaway gag, and the throwaway gag contains the title of Jumpstart. I have got to attach a paper version of it. Now, a paper version, it may seem a little weird to you, like why he's still using paper. I've got thousands of these in my top drawer. I'm going to cut one out and stick it down. This will not be used in the final version. Also in Photoshop, there's on file a very clean version of this, and I'll delete this and I'll use the clean version. So why is this even here? I'm not going to use it. Why is it here? It is here because two versions of Jumpstart are created for a Sunday installment. One version is the original art, and the second version is what's called a color guide. A color guide is used so that I don't have to physically color this thing for Sundays. There's no color version of Jumpstart on Sundays. There's just a black and white version with numbers written all over it, and those numbers have corresponding colors. I don't know if I have one to show you. I wasn't prepared to show anybody that. Let me look at my files real quick. I might have one down here. If not, I have one. I do have one. Here. So the color guide is this thing. This is a very old. This is a very, very old. When I got syndicated back in 1989, my editor literally gave me this piece of paper with the colors. You can see the numbers assigned to there. And those numbers are all I have to do. I've got to write numbers on here. So I'll make 2 copies of this. And one copy will have that title with numbers written on it. The other version won't have that. And that version is going to be the original art used in newspapers. And the second version with the numbers all over the place is just for my syndicate in Kansas City to assign colors in a paint by number fashion. So that's what that is all about. That's why I had to stick my title in here, even though I'm not going to use it. So, all right. Continuing on drawing. I don't want to eat up your entire lunch break. And I have a podcast. I I have to do today, so I don't want to take too much time doing this. And that's another thing, being a cartoonist, I have certain obligations that have really nothing. I won't say they have nothing to do with my career, but they're ancillary. They're people wanting. I'm speaking on a radio show in Tampa, a sports show. I'm going to be discussing the character Marcus in Jumpstart, who plays Marcus Glover, who plays for the LA Chargers. I'll be discussing why I added him to the cast and what it means to have a fictitious professional athlete in the strip during the COVID quarantine era. I'll be doing that podcast today. I'll put the information up on my Facebook page if you want to listen in. It's just a podcast. You can tune in anywhere you are and listen to it. So I'll start with my balloons, speech balloons, and then move to the framing. Like so. Again, hitting lines more than once, giving them that look and feel of an old-fashioned crow-quilled pen. And it just makes the line more vital. So I kind of just do two at a time, like 2 panels at a time. I'm going to go in and ink in the faces at this point of the characters. Again, being a little more fussy. I want this to look as perfect as possible. Sonny is sitting in a classroom handing in homework. You don't need to show the whole classroom. Since we've all been in school, I can get away with a lot less information than you may think. Because there's a phenomenon called closure. Closure. It's an artistic term. It means that the brain is smart, and the brain fills in the blanks. Your mind remembers what school was like, what sitting in chairs next to other kids was like. So the slightest indication here is just enough to trigger your real memory. And it absolves me of the need to go into great detail, showing a chalkboard and a teacher and a desk and a kid behind her and a chair and another kid and another chair. A little bit goes a long way thanks to closure. Closure is the reason that I can have Sonny reaching off out of frame. And she's saying, Dexter, the teacher said, pass along your homework. And she's reaching off out of the frame. And even though you don't see her entire arm, you don't panic and think, oh my goodness, what happened to Sonny's arm? It was amputated. Oh my goodness, where's the rest of her? She got cut off at the elbow. Closure stops your brain from doing that. And your mind, even though I've cut her off visually, your mind draws for you. And it draws her whole hand, her whole arm, a piece of paper in it. Your brain fills in those blanks, and that's called closure. So you have to use closure and not abuse it. Use it for good, not evil. All right. There's a kid in the classroom. He's got glasses on. He's got kind of a spiky hairdo. He's happy. And again, just a little bit with this guy is enough. I don't have to go nuts drawing some other dude way in the distance. Just a little bit of that and a little bit of that goes a long way. It just says, it just says everything. It just says there's another guy in the class, and unlike Dexter, he's done his homework. Where he's handing in his homework. Dexter's a strange character. Sometimes he does his homework and doesn't hand it in for some reason. There are kids like that in real life. I will not mention any names. So here's Dexter looking like, what? Homework? He's quite shocked that he's got to hand in his homework, even though he's been through this many, many, many times before. Okay, well, true confession, Dexter is based on me. I don't go around bragging about this because there's nothing to brag about, but I struggled in school when I was about 12 years old. I transferred from an easy school, quote unquote easy school, to a much more difficult school, and ended up repeating 7th grade. So this character is based on me. I've not observed this behavior in some other kid and and come up with this character. Dexter is based on me. All my characters are based on real people. Sometimes I'll combine this person with that person to make this new person. That's called creating an amalgam. Sometimes I'll just make an amalgam, 2 or 3 people that I've met in my life, and I base a whole character. Sometimes I just base something a character says on something I heard someone say before that I thought, in real life, I thought it was funny. So that's, the secret to being a cartoonist is paying attention. Paying attention when anyone's talking. Just pay attention. They might be dispensing valuable material. I don't want people to think that I'm only interested in getting material from them, but it does help. Listen, I've got deadlines every single day. So anyway, this is a much more close image of him. And that's because he's delivering the key line, the dog ate my homework. And I've zoomed in tight on that frame for a reason. This is the pivotal frame here when we establish the source of the humor. Some kid using a worn out excuse like the dog ate my homework. This has to be leading somewhere. That can't be the gag. That can't be the end of anything. You understand? It would just be a little bit too cliche to be funny if that was it. But he's saying it right away. Dexter, the teacher, says pass up your homework, and he says the dog ate my homework. So obviously I'm using a cliche to say or do something surprising. You see how I have these 2 balloons real close together? I want them closer than that. I'm going to use whiteout to do that. Whiteout just gives me a nice fine line between the 2. And it's really pretty. I like to come really, really close sometimes. Not in every case, but in some cases I want them really, really close in there. Again, adding to the illusion that perhaps I'm using very old school tools like a little paintbrush or something to make Jumpstart, or a crow quill pen. In this frame she says, dude, seriously, that old cliche? Dude, seriously, that old cliche? Dude. Period. Seriously? Question mark. That old cliche? All right. I'm going to be importing this lettering into this strip. I did not always work that way. I used to draw my lettering right in here with the other artwork. And frankly, guys, it just took longer and it wasn't as nice. I can't quite explain it. I think part of it is just when you're forced to draw a certain size, and when you're forcing yourself to draw a certain size, the artwork looks good, but your lettering looks forced. It looks unnatural, and then it's tedious and it takes time. It eats up your life making lettering that small. This just allows me to make lettering much bigger. As you can see, these letters could never fit into that balloon in a natural way. Photoshop's going to allow me to transform them and let them sit nicely in there. That part of technology I do love. I have to admit I love it. It makes lettering really, really simple. And I'm going to put the frame on here. I'm going to hit that line again. Make it a little more dynamic, a little thick and a little thin. Hit the edges on there, just like that. And the characters. Sonny now looking unimpressed with this guy, using such a tired, old, and unconvincing cliche like the dog ate my homework as his excuse. You know, when you're drawing the same characters over and over and over again, some people think that, you know, the amazing thing, like how can you make them look the exact same way for years, over and over and over again? I'm actually never successfully making them the same or exactly the same. They just have to look familiar. They don't have to look identical to anything. They just have to be familiar. It's one of the reasons, not just in Jumpstart, but in cartooning in general, characters don't age a whole lot. Charlie Brown stays little. Snoopy stays alive, even though a real dog would be only here for a few years and then gone. It's the familiarity. I can turn to this one place and I can count on seeing people I know. It's the lifeblood of and the heartbeat of comic strips. You know, Beetle Bailey just stays around, stays in the military for years and years and years. And that familiarity is why Sonny doesn't age in real time. If she did, she'd be unrecognizable to people who have taken a little time off. You know, you take a little time off, you don't realize it. And then I come back and she's aged. And you're like, I was just here like a month ago. You know, you were going for like 2 years, dude. You're not keeping track of it. I am. I'm a cartoonist. You're not thinking about it. So I keep Sonny and JoJo and these kids it's about the same familiar way, knowing you won't be here every day looking at it. And when you take time off and come back, I'm going to feed that familiarity back to you. So, okay, now I'm going to move to this frame where I use an exterior of the school instead of the characters. Why? So why do you think I've done that? Why not have the character speaking again? Because the strip can look unimaginative, visually unimaginative, and a bit redundant if I don't change up things, if I don't switch gears a little bit. So I just simply pull out, let you see the exterior of the school. It also establishes where they go to school, which is nice. You go, wow, okay, that's their school. That's her school. That's where Dexter and Sonny go. Okay. It's just a nice thing. It makes the visual composition better. Let's see. I have to imagine what this school would look like, what an elementary school might look like. I know there would be a flag out here. All right. I'm just going to put a flag there. Just have to remember to make that red, white, and blue. And that flag I've just decided will be the only thing that hangs off without an edge. Maybe it's flapping in the breeze. It just adds to the convincing nature of this thing being a flag if it's not tied into the frame. These would be sort of, nowadays they don't want kids getting hit by a car to run off the road, so they have these kind of posts, concrete. I remember these things from back when my kids were school age. So art requires you remember. Did you remember how things are in real life? Just remembering school having double doors to walk into. No school would have a single door. Too many kids are coming in and out at once. So you put a double door there. All right. This would be a stone structure. Not a chimney necessarily, just could be a wall. It would be made of stone. Big stones and little stones, like that. Big stones and little stones, right? Just a structure. Maybe it's dark on one side like that. And yeah. Just a roof line. You don't want to go crazy with stuff like school. People get it. Again, closure. You go, wow, I get it. I remember that. School. you know, that's enough. That's more than enough. A window. Maybe another window. Just leave it. Like, we get it. Everybody gets it. Something that says the roof is here, the roof, right? And that's it. You can add bricks. And you're out. All right. Maybe this is dark in here. Maybe it's dark. And maybe there's a bush. Okay, that's enough. So now we're moving down to the next thing. Charles Schulz had an expression: only what's necessary. Words to live by. I mean, this is what we do. Just only what's necessary. If you read my strip a lot, sometimes I have lots of people in the background. That's because that's necessary. If I'm having a scene with Marcy at work, I'd have a lot of people in the background because I want to establish that she works in a bustling metropolitan hospital. So there would be lots of people moving about in the background. Having a classroom, like a little middle school classroom, elementary school, whatever it is. You don't want every kid in the class. You don't need that. You just have to establish there's more than just Sonny and Dexter. Just having one other kid, again, this thing called closure kicks in, and you add those children. You say, oh, okay, there's a lot of kids in that class. There's 15, 20 kids. Just by adding one other kid. You don't think that the class has 3 kids in it. So let's do this. There's a little bit too much tracing paper, so I'm going to cut some of it off. I've already run my hand against it, and it moved everything. Cut some of that off. It's extra. I'll use that. I actually save tracing paper. Sometimes you have to move a character around in a rough, and I'll use that scrap paper to do it. Again, Sonny looking disapproving at her friend, because Sonny knows that Dexter is a smart boy. When I have a character like Dexter going, he's slouching in class, he's disinterested, it is not to imply that he's dumb. When I was struggling in school, it was not because I was dumb. I wasn't accustomed to the disciplines in the school I was now attending. It was a new school with different expectations, and I was reluctant to step up, frankly. And that's kind of what is going on with Dexter. Sonny knows that he's smarter than this, and she wants him to sit up straight, to get interested, or at the very least pretend to be interested. I actually learned that when I was going through my thing, I learned that just looking interested helped. Just pretending to be interested, just acting interested, gave me like a better grade. Yeah, showing your teacher that you don't care is not a smart move, kids. Not a smart move. So, and here's Dexter. Hey, Corey, what's up, man? Corey is from Atlantic, Canada. And Corey is asking, what's the size of the paper I'm using? My strip is a little more than 13 inches wide and 9.5 inches tall altogether. They don't sell paper that size. They sell paper that's actually bigger than that. And they sell it slightly. But finding the exact right size is not important. They do have a size that is real close to exactly that Strathmore makes, but I use bigger than necessary. And this is the size I use. I use 14 by 17 Strathmore. Hope that helps, Corey. Thanks for asking, man. All right. So Dexter is. Thanks for checking in. Sometimes I don't know whether this feed is even working. I had a lot of trouble getting this going. So if I see someone like, "Hey, I have a question," I'm like, "Oh, my God, it's working." Me and technology, man. I'm no techno geek by any stretch. I'm just an old school cartoonist, man. I've loved. I think one of the reasons I'm very reticent to use modern technology or just go to a Wacom pad and all that kind of stuff, the tablet thing, is that you guys, I've just been too enamored with this feeling. I'm a 58-year-old man. I've been sitting around drawing cartoons since I was about 3 years old. It's a long time. I love the materials. I love the feeling of thinking of something and then drawing it. I love the feeling of a piece of paper in my hand. I like holding the actual newspaper when it's all a said and done deal and looking at it and getting that feeling. And there's my work right there. Like it's a throwback to when I was a child. And it's hard to kick that. That's where I got my first approval. You understand? That's when Mom said, "Wow, look how talented you are." Whether she was being honest or just helping me, doesn't matter. It worked. I believed it. I still believe it. And I still get excited seeing ink pour out of a pen from the tips of my fingers. I wish I could express this better. I got guys in the business looking at me like I'm from a different planet. Like, dude, get a tablet. You'd be finished by now. You'd be finished this and on to the next thing. All you need is a Wacom. I'm like, I'm enjoying this kind of ride right here. I'm enjoying this ride. The drawing of that line. I like that line. I feel connected to it. I love making a real mark, not just on paper, but on the planet we live on. I like making a mark that will outlive me. These marks, they'll be here when I'm gone. My grandkids will be able to, I hope I'm still here, God willing, while my grandkids are here, but either way, they can look at the marks I've made and say, my grandfather drew that. Even if someone's not related to me and they're just interested in the work I've done, these marks speak volumes. They say what a fingerprint says, is he was here. Kilroy was here. And I think that is my connection. That is my addiction, is that I'm a child at heart. And I lived long enough to see all my dreams in the world of cartooning come true. I'm not unaware of it. I think I'm tremendously blessed. But all my life I felt, someone sent me a direct message on Facebook and said, can you give me advice and blah, blah, blah. And at the time I couldn't. I'm just too busy sometimes to give specific advice to people. It's one of the reasons, frankly, I wrote a book called Fearless, Cartoonist Guide to Life. I think it's full of the most valuable advice I could ever come up with for anyone wanting to be a cartoonist. But if that guy is listening right now, I have a feeling he's not, but my best advice for anyone wanting to be a cartoonist, start realizing that your opinion about things counts. Your perspective on life is really, really necessary. And people want to hear from you. Like, just feel that pressing need to be heard so that when you express yourself, it's with urgency. It's with a kind of an understanding that they want to hear from me. You know, it may not be 100% true when you're just starting out, that people are just dying to hear from you. But the more you convince yourself of that, the better you'll be and faster you'll progress as a talented person. You have to start believing, as Joker said in one of the early Batman movies, the one with Jack Nicholson, wait till they get a load of me. wait till they get I felt that way when I was a kid. I think I sold my first, I didn't sell my first published work was in my student newspaper. And I was only 13 years old. But it was I look back on it, it holds up. I think it's funny stuff. I did a little cartoon for the Shipley Beacon. And I think it holds up. And I was able to draw really funny caricatures of my teachers and stuff. So instead of talking behind the teacher's back, I could just draw a very public caricature making fun of them. And they would laugh. Like they'd be in on the joke. They'd say, wow, I look like that? That's funny. It takes the curse off everything to express yourself. The thing I love most about cartooning is expressing myself honestly. And it's just, people just love it, even when you're making fun of them. So, I'm closing in on the home stretch here, which is very exciting. And this is not the end. There's actually a step on my computer, I mentioned it, where I go into Photoshop and I add all the legal language. If you look at a finished version of my strip or any strip, there's tons of legal mumbo jumbo all over it. Like, let me see if I had one of these. This is an old strip from 2014. But you know what I'm talking about is like there's all kind of legal stuff that has to go on the website. Go Comics is on here. The distribution thing, that's just a pure legal thing. My personal website, robbarmstrong.com, is on here. This strip is going to be, I'll add my new book to this thing. It'll say On a Roll, a 30-year Jumpstart Treasury. That'll be in tiny type on here. So all that's done in Photoshop. All that kind of stuff is done in Photoshop. Even my signature is done in Photoshop. Now I'll sign this. I'll sign it right here, but I'm going to delete this version of my signature and add the one in Photoshop. It's just cleaner. It's prettier. It's perfect. It looks kind of like that. But since this is a piece of paper with my art on it, I do sign it. The thing with the deletion is a virtual thing. So I'll put the date on here. I think this is going to run on the 16th of November or something. I'll put the date on there. I'll fix that date if that's not the date. I've got to look on a real calendar and see what the date is. I think it's the 16th. So I just date it and sign it, but I'll be putting the real stuff on later. In fact, the date, I'll put the date on my this thing, like that. So that's the date that will be pasted on top of that date. And all that's going to happen upstairs in my spare bedroom, converted into an office. I can't take this setup up there because I'm afraid to touch it. It's taken it's taken so long to make it work. I'm afraid to unplug it and then take it up there. They show you my computer stuff. Take my word for it, it's really boring. Like I don't even like up there like I'm watching TV, or I'm just listening to music really loud. I don't have to think. By the time I go upstairs, I'm done thinking. This is just adding legal stuff and finding really weird stray marks, or tightening up the space between balloons, making a background character slightly larger, slightly bigger. It's so not interesting. I mean, I would not take you guys you guys through that process, through that part of my process. I mean, trust me, you would hate me for it, so I don't do it. But it's necessary, and it allows me to make a digitized version of the strip. Frankly, for the purposes of sending it off to my syndicate in Kansas City, Missouri, nothing is better than a digital version. I don't have to explain to you why that is true. I just know that back in the day, I had to take this thing, this original work, to FedEx. I'm not kidding. I did that for years. First half of my career, I just ran around and tried to find a FedEx that was open. Sometimes they would close for the night right in front of me. Literally, they would just close the blinds right in front of me. Like, click, bye, you blew it. I'm like, how far I drove to get here? Please, don't do this to me. I'm a very important customer. Don't do this to me. I've got a comic strip that I got it at that point. It was in New York. I got to get that to New York. I never forget one night I gave my cartoon, this is true, to a total stranger who happened to be going to New York City. He and I both missed FedEx. Door locked right in front of us. He said out loud, I have to be in D.C. in the morning, and I mean, this package has to be in D.C. in the morning. I said, mine has to be in New York in the morning. He said, I'll be in New York. I said, would you take my package? He said, sure. Total stranger. So I'm very grateful for the digital world that allows me to no longer do crazy things like that. But the guy really did it. He went to New York and called me and said, I'm at your company. It's so nice. Everybody here is so nice. Wow. This is amazing. Garfield is here. The cat. And I said, hey, man, give me your home address. I'm going to send you a signed version of that original. And in those days, they were getting my originals, by delivery. So I had to wait for like months to get them back. And if I wanted to give one, a specific one to someone, I had to wait months for it. And I waited for that one, signed it, and gave it to that guy, that stranger. So yeah, there's a very good reason this is a digital file and all of that. I push a button and it goes to Kansas City, Missouri in just under 3 minutes. It's a green line, it just goes across my screen. And that green line is the most exciting thing about technology in my life. So, final frame. This is the one containing the gag. I want to clean up some of the boo-boos I just made. I want to tighten up this spacing. I just love that. I love making the spacing like almost invisible. And now I get to draw the weird aliens. I'm going to use a finer pen for that. He's got his eyeballs down at the bottom where normally a person's chin would be. His mouth is up here, his teeth. If you're going to make dramatic changes to human anatomy for the sake of drawing an alien, even doing it, you have to make things familiar. It's upside down, but it's familiar. I'm not changing the way arms are drawn, just making them skinnier. I'm not changing the way a mouth looks. I'm just making it upside down. You don't want to go too crazy. We're all not Bill Watterson. You know who Bill Watterson is? Creator of Calvin and Hobbes. The guy was a master at the wild-looking alien. So, thank you, honey. My wife just bought me a cup of coffee. Look at that. I love it. This is great. I was fading fast. You guys, I was fading so fast over here. Okay, coffee. Now, here we go. Okay, some pumpkin coffee. Nice. Very nice. All right. Here's the dog. Looking like being in the company of aliens is not even a big deal to him. And here's the master alien. Gotta look a little crazy, but don't go too crazy. And I don't even want to be compared to Bill Watterson. Like I'm you want to avoid borrowing the interest from some other guy. So he would make an alien. Like this guy could make aliens. I still look at Calvin books as just master classes in art and cartoon art. It's not even cartoon art. It's just a master class in art. He's just a brilliant cartoonist. Sparky Schultz, Sparky Schultz was an actual friend of mine. I've never met Bill Watterson. I hope to, maybe. But I've never met the guy. I just consider his work to have been a tremendous inspiration to me as a cartoonist, because he elevated the art form itself by spending a lot of time, putting a lot of love into his page. Sparky Schultz likewise did that. Sparky on a different level because he elevated the writing. He allowed cartoonists to speak to the human condition, the state of mind, self-doubt, trying and failing. Peanuts represents the indomitable human spirit despite obvious adversity. Lucy was so guaranteed to pull away the football, everyone knew it. Charlie Brown even knew it. But he still ran with all of his might and tried to kick the football. That's how we are. I know that's how I am. That's why I've always related so well to Peanuts. Getting a comic strip syndicated, you guys, is the hardest thing I've ever endeavored to do, frankly. Being in more newspapers than I ever imagined I would be in, I consider it to be divine intervention. And I just thank God for 30 years. I'm hoping to do 30 more. So that's all for today. I've got to do a podcast on this sports show down in Tampa. Look for this in its final form on Go Comics. Let me just double check on the date that it will run, because I do have an old-fashioned calendar next to my desk. Okay, so I had it wrong by one day. It's going to run on November 15th, not the 16th. So I've got to change the signature date on here. See that? Labels from Staples Office Supply. Yes, I like them. I like Staples a lot. 11, 15, 20. It's going to go right there. Cut that bad boy out. Peel off the excess. Now on my my lettering page, I don't have to do anything other than write 15 under the 16. I'm not going to use it. I just, again, this is all a Photoshop document, really. I just put that up there. So on November 15th, you can log on to gocomics.com. Gocomics.com, and you can see the final version of that strip. You guys, this was really, really a lot of fun. My first time taking my readers through the entire process, all the way from writing it down on the back of a receipt to doing a thumbnail sketch, to creating a rough sketch, which is down here, to creating the finished version, which is right there. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you join me again. I'm going to draw live again, I believe, next week. So I'll see you then.